Hello, everyone. As we have global audience, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you. My name is Larissa Brinkmann from the SAP Global User Groups organization, and I welcome you in our today's SAP community call. I'm very happy to announce the topic of our call today. We will talk about SAP Sustainability Data Exchange with a focus on packaging data exchange. I'm also very happy to announce our speakers. We have Darren West, who is Global Head of Circular Economy Solutions at SAP, and we have Tim van Kerkhof, who is Product Manager of SAP Sustainability Data Exchange. By the way, we had Tim in our session last week. We were talking about Sustainability Data Exchange. I will put the link to this session in the chat later as soon as the presentation starts. Tim and Darren will lead us through the session, but before we start and before I hand over to them, just a short notes on housekeeping. We kindly ask you to post your questions via Q&A tool. This is a live chat, so in order to post your question, you need to be signed in on YouTube. And our speakers will answer the question after the presentation. And the PDF of this session will be included in the description of the video that will be available for on-demand watching on YouTube. With this, let's get started. And over to you, Darren.
Thank you very much, Larissa. Okay, welcome everybody. We have an exciting agenda for you today. We're going to talk about two things that impact packaging. So first of all, I'm going to give a short introduction to the latest hot thing in the packaging world, which is the packaging and packaging waste regulation. A little bit of a mouthful, but many of you who are selling products in the EU, this will impact you. Right, so stay tuned because this is quite a big piece of regulation. And what we've discovered is that many of our customers don't really understand it. So we're here to explain it, but also to talk to you about a piece of technology, which is the Sustainability Data Exchange, and how we can use that to help you to pull the essential data that you're going to need to comply with this regulation into SAP systems. So Tim will tell you a little bit more about that. I get to do the first 20 minutes or so explaining this regulation to you. Then I'm going to hand over to Tim. As Larissa said, please do put your comments into the chat, ask questions in the Q&A feature, and we'll be happy to take those later. All righty. So Tim, tell me if this is showing up okay. We're looking good? Excellent. Right. Let's jump into the PPWR, which is the EU's packaging regulation. So a couple of things I want to mention to you about PPWR. First of all, it's now, right? And it's it packs everybody possibly on this call, anybody that wants to put a product on the market in the EU that has any packaging associated with it is falling under this new PPWR. And it's not going to be postponed. This is not something that's scheduled for an omnibus. This is definitely going to happen. And in a minute, I'll take you through some slides that tell you what the deadlines are, but you need to start thinking about this now. You need to start thinking about this now because in August, there's a compliance requirement where you have to produce a compliance statement for every single product that you put on the market. So every single piece of packaging that goes with every single product, you need a compliance statement, and you need that by August 2026. So you're running out of time if you haven't started thinking about this already. So that's the first thing I want to tell you about. One, it's now. Two, it's a very complicated piece of legislation. And I'll go on to explain in a couple of slides what that means for you. And thirdly, we've had some really good success with our solutions in helping our customers with that. So I'm going to give you a bit of a flavor of some of the feedback we've had, some of the products involved, and then you can start to find out some more. Okay, so that's where we're going to go. So first thing, back to it's now. As I mentioned, there is no omnibus, there is no delay. I know this because I was on a panel about 2 weeks ago now on a Sustainable Packaging Summit. And one of the people on this panel alongside me was a guy called Wolfgang from the EU. And he directly answered this question. No, there is nothing planned. We're not going to omnibus this one, which means you have to keep going. You have to focus on this one. So there you go. There's a little photo of me in action there. Let's talk a bit about why this is so complex. So the EU PPWR basically increases the amount of reporting that you need to do on packaging. So many of you be familiar with extended producer responsibility. Some of you may also be familiar with plastic taxes. So in the EU, all packaging put on the market is subjected to extended producer responsibility fees. Spain and the UK also, in addition to that, have plastic taxes that you have to pay. For example, in the UK, if you have less than 30% recycled content, you pay an additional fee based on the tonnage of plastic that you're putting on the market. Now, this new regulation, PPWR, adds even more complexity to that on top of the existing EPR schemes. Those EPR schemes are not going away, but this adds even more. So as I mentioned, it affects all packaging that's placed on the market. The thing that is the most pressing thing that you need to respond to is the thing called Article 5, which is a compliance statement to do with substances of concern for all packaging. So what the EU is checking is that you haven't got any nasty chemicals in there, any heavy metals, any PFAS, but the obligation is on you to prove that and to create a statement that says that, and that needs some certain amount of data and calculation. The third thing about this packaging regulation is that this trend to having more and more data on packaging and the fee structure that goes along with it, with things like EPR, for example, is becoming very material now to our customers, to companies. And we've spoken to many of the audit firms out there, like KPMG and Deloitte and EY, and they tell us, plus data that we've seen from companies that publish data in news feeds, etc. They tell us that it's around 0.3 to 1% of the product revenue is the amount of these EPR fees that you're going to have to pay or should be paying right now. And when you think about that for a second, depending on the margins that you're earning on your products, that could be something like 5% or more of gross margin. And traditionally what's happened is these decisions that you're making about packaging, kind of what goes in what packaging, what kind of formats, how they're blended together, those decisions were taken very much operationally, and the fees that were paid were done, say, by a local country unit like Germany or Netherlands or France or whatever. And now what's starting to happen is that the CFOs of bigger companies are starting to go, well, hold on a minute. This, if you make a decision over here about a piece of packaging and then you sell that product in multiple markets, that can have quite a significant impact. If we get the calculation wrong, or we get the materials wrong, we could be charging, or it could charge us a lot more money than if we did it a slightly different way. And so the level of fees and the complexity of the legislation means that it makes a lot of sense to bring all this into one place, and therefore have a system that can handle this. The next thing to mention again is this PPWR means you have a risk if you cannot prove the compliance. And that risk means that you could, in theory, if you aren't able to show you're compliant, you could face a ban of your product from all EU markets. So that would be a significant financial risk. Further down the line, come February 2027, EU member states could also levy fines. So on top of a ban, you could also have a fine. But that's coming further down the line. And then finally, the data needs to be extremely granular, needs to be component level, and we need to look at the material properties of each component, which I shall go on to in a second. So let me just flick over to the next slide. What is the purpose of PPWR? So the idea is we're trying to get more sustainable packaging in the EU. And in order to do that, the law is quite broad ranging. So it encompasses brand owners, manufacturers, people who make packaging, people who put packaging on the market. It could include, as well as the brand owners, it could include retailers, obviously for own brands, But if you're importing a product and you're the first person that puts that product onto the EU market, then you are responsible for that as well. So importers and distributors also fall under this. And the goal of it is to make packaging more recyclable. So we're looking at the design of packaging. We're looking at how materials are combined. We're looking at recycled content. We're looking at downstream, how recyclable is it? We're also looking at benchmarking how much packaging is used over time. We're looking at do we have these substances of concern I mentioned for Article 5? And later on, it's going to be reuse and recycle content targets, as well as things like compostability. That goes in there as well. So lots to think about. Let's look at the timeline. This is quite a busy slide. I apologize for it being a busy slide, but I think you need to see this stuff. So this is my attempt to put a Gantt chart in front of you. So it goes from left to right, and it just explains that PPWR is not a point thing. It's not like a point regulation where we go, okay, by this time you have to do this. It's actually a sequence of events, and a sequence of events that layers on complexity over time. So it gets harder and harder, and the targets get tougher and tougher over time. So you have to think of it as a regulation that starts in 2026 and then gets more complex through to 2030. So let's take you through some of these measures. So it's live now. It came into force in February 2025 with an 18-month run-in, which takes you to August 2026, which is why August 2026 is this first deadline. You can see on the chart there, I talk about substances of concern. That's Article 5. So you need to prove that you are compliant with this regulation, and particularly you don't have any of these substances of concern. Then in 2027, there are additional features dropping in around EPR. Now, as I mentioned, EPRs are live now. You're already paying EPR fees if you put packaging on the market. But what's going to happen is more harmonization of the regulations. So the definitions will perhaps be a little simpler. However, each member state will still be responsible for setting the rules and setting the fees. So EPR is not going away. PPWR just adds to that complexity. But don't worry, we've got systems that can help you. And then as it goes to the right, you can see 2028, we've got this design for recyclability coming in. And then 2030, we've got this eco-fee modulation coming in. So lots and lots more complexity. Quick word on recyclability. Many of you will be aware that recyclability assessment is something you have to do in certain countries right now, like Germany, like the Netherlands. There's one or two others where you have to do it right now. France, I think, in CITEO. But that's national level legislation. So we have built that already into the product I'm going to tell you about in a minute. It's called Responsible Design and Production. And we use partners who've got specialist knowledge to do a recyclability assessment and then pull that data back into core SAP systems. Now, that recyclability assessment currently at the national level is going to evolve into an EU-wide, so pan-EU recyclability assessment standard, and they're going to change the definitions to an ABC rating. Now, we've already built that recyclability assessment capability into our system, so as it changes to the new regime, we can, of course, update it. So look out for that, but it's going to basically get more and more widely used and new definitions. Okay, so what's the good news? The good news is most of the data that you need is either in an SAP system or we can pull it into an SAP system. And that's what Tim's going to talk about in a second. So if it's missing, if you don't have data, all the data you need, and let me be honest, when I talk to customers, most of them don't have all the data they need right now in the systems. Then we need to help you to pull that in. And typically customers are doing that very much as a manual process. They're doing it with spreadsheets or they're doing it with emails, but it's a hard and complex problem. We've automated that, and Tim will explain a little bit more about that in a second. And then what we're saying is you need to get on this problem now. If you have to publish a compliance statement for all your packaging down to the product level where you've got to split out all the different components and analyze that and have that ready for August. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, those compliance statements, you need to keep them for 5 years or 10 years in a system. So you can't escape this, and you can be audited by the authorities at at very short notice. So they want to see these compliance statements that you've kept for 5 or 10 years. So you have to be ready for that deadline. So in order to get ready for that deadline, we are putting the PPWR features into our product in Q1, giving our customers a good 6 months to test it, make sure everything's working. But it means you should get your packaging data into the system now. And if you're aware that you have gaps, and I'm pretty sure you will have some gaps, that's how you need to start thinking about systems which can pull additional data that you need from your suppliers into your systems. Right. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Alrighty. So how do we deal with PPWR? Well, the core of it is this product that I mentioned, SAP Responsible Design and Production. This is our flagship product that deals with EPR. It's why I've got circular economy in my title. It is a circular economy product. It deals with packaging, EPR fees. It deals with plastic taxes. It deals with circular design, so we can set design rules in this thing, and you can set rules for your packaging and check how compliant you are. So it's essentially does two things. And I'll just quickly summarize what it does. It's got it at its heart. It's got a central model for all your packaging, primary, secondary, and tertiary. And it pulls, the first thing is it needs to know what products are sold where. So that's sitting in core SAP. It replicates that shipment data. So the product shipments, it knows what products are being shipped where, and it pulls that into the core. And then the other thing it needs to know is, well, what packaging goes with what product, right? So there's the packaging bill of materials. Now, customers will have that in lots of different places. Sometimes it's in an SAP system. Sometimes it's in a third-party system. Sometimes it's in a PLM system. Might even be in a spreadsheet. Doesn't actually matter. We just copy and replicate that and pull that in. So every time a new piece of packaging is created, just replicate it, pull it in. Then we know what packaging goes with what product, and we know what products are being shipped where. This is essentially everything you need for then doing that EPR fee calculation. And then the final thing we do is we know the rules. So we know the rules of the EPR schemes. Those are coded in, and then we can apply those rules. So with a click of a button, you can calculate your EPR fees at the country level for the year, or you could look at even a shipment level. And then some of the really clever things we can do that nobody else can do is, because we've got all the financial data. If, for example, you have a customer did this to me last week. They said, "Hey, I'm struggling to persuade my retailers about these EPR fees. Can you break it down for me?" And we said, "Yeah, we do that all the time. We do that now in Spain for the Spanish plastic tax." So what you can do, for example, is you can calculate an EPR fee on a whole shipment that you send to a customer. And then you can show on their invoice, here's the basic product charges, and then here are the EPR fees broken out that go with the products that we've just shipped you. And that's a really powerful tool. So SAP does the calculation, and then it can post that back into the financial ledger and then print it on your invoices. Don't think anybody else can do that. So that's a really cool feature. All right. So what are we doing to this wonderful product, Responsible Design and Production for PPWR? 4 things. So these are the 4 things. First of all, we're centralizing the packaging data. So we're creating the ability to pull in additional data fields so that we can accommodate all the data that's required for PPWR. We're also building what we call an extensible rules engine, so we can create new rules. We can benchmark performance over time, so we can, for example, set recyclability targets and see how the packaging is responding over time. We're producing compliance statements, compliance documents. That's the Article 5, just there. And also a really cool goals and tracking dashboard, so you can see how you're doing over time. So these are the necessary additions. Now, this slide, I'm going to show it to you on the screen. You will get this in the handouts that Larissa mentioned. So I've written in big letters, take away, read this later, because I'm not going to have time to show you every single line on this. So read the takeaway. But I just wanted to make a point. So this slide, and indeed the next slide, the point I want to make is SAP's got this covered, and we've thought about PPWR, and we've thought about, well, what sequence of events is happening with these deadlines for PPWR? Do you remember I said PPWR is not a point in time, it's a range from 2026 through to 2030. So what we've done is we've looked at all the requirements, we've listed them out, and as you can see here, we've got the article number on the left-hand side. We've got in the second column kind of when that hits, when you have to be compliant with that particular condition or article in the legislation. And then we've got when are we going to do something. So for example, with the Article 5, the substances of concern, we're launching that in Q1, and we've put it in roadmap already in November. And then there's a description there of like, this is what we're doing. And then on the right-hand side is the products. Now, as you can see here, we've got all the articles in sequential order. The bit in the middle there, the blue band, I'm going to come on to that in a minute. This is our, how do we get packaging data into the systems? So we'll come on to that in a second. Let me just show you the next slide. So here we have the remaining articles that are going to impact you as customers. And this is what you need to do and when we're going to launch that facility. So the message I want to leave you with on this is SAP is ahead of the game. We've studied PPWR. If you get bored, by the way, and you can't sleep, do read the PPWR legislation. I think, you know, it's 400 pages. You'll be fast asleep within about 20 minutes. I can guarantee it. Anyway, it is a very complicated set of legislation. We're ahead of the game. We've studied it, and we're going to drop the functionality that you need well in advance of when you need it. And it's all going to be built into this product, responsible design and production. So there you go. It's all there. Now, what about, oh, I'm going to jump onto a little bit of the results in a minute. But one of the things I wanted to show you really quickly, let me just go back to that blue thing, was the 3 ways in which we are planning to pull data in. So we've got 3 ways of doing it because customers' landscapes are all slightly different. Okay, so the first one is anybody that uses our PLM product, which is now called IPD, we've built an integration with responsible design and production and IPD. The next thing that Tim's going to be talking about is the Sustainability Data Exchange. And the beauty of that is it can also work very nicely with the business network. He'll talk about that in a second. And then the final thing is for those customers that don't have that, we also have a partner solution from Opezas as well. And Opezas will be launching that with us jointly in December. And we'll make more announcements about that as well in January. And there'll be demo videos and all sorts of exciting things. So 3 different ways of doing it. Tim's going to cover that second one in a lot of detail and how we connect with the business network. So he's going to do that in a second. Just wanted to say the third thing I wanted to mention is the successes we're having right now with tackling this topic of EPR and PPWR. So one of the things is one of our bigger customers, Nestle, we had a webinar with them where we were talking a bit about the US situation. And it was an interview between myself and a guy called Gerald, who's one of their IT leaders out in the States. And you can find this on our website. So if you either scan the QR code there or go to sap.com/RDP, you'll get to the product page, you scroll down, you'll find this USA webinar, and it's about 40 minutes in. I ask him this question and I say, so what's the benefit of using SAP Responsible Design and Production? Why would you do it? And he says, I know I can give you a very precise answer because we tested it. So we had some customers running your product, Darren. We had one of our divisions using Excel spreadsheets, and we have one of our divisions using consultants. And in both of the alternative cases, you guys came out like 1/4 of the cost and the time. So, 25% of the cost. So you get basically you are 4 times better than everybody else. So that was really nice. And he said that, and we have that recorded. So do go and have a listen to that interview because it's a really interesting thing. It's not, it tells a full kind of pros and cons story of how that evolved over time. But, it's nice to get that recognition at the end. Final slide before I hand over to Tim is if you want to know more about PPWR, so the deadlines, the complexity, it's not easy to do it justice in a short presentation. So we've written a guide with one of the top consultancies out there called Eunomia. Eunomia advised the EU Commission on the PPWR, so they're very knowledgeable and we jointly co-authored this guide. So you can download that. Again, it's on our product page, but if you just click on the QR code there, you should be able to get to it and you should be able to download it. So do that. It's absolutely free. I think you just have to put in your email address to get it, but that's it. Right. So how do we get the data into the system if you don't have it? This is where we've got these options. We've got the pretty diagram here, but I'm going to let Tim tell you about how we're going to do that using an established product called SAP Data Exchange. So over to you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you very much, Darren. So please keep sharing your screen, move to the next slide, and then I can move to a small demo system. So for those who are already part of the video or watched the video from last week as well, I think this is then a common slide, but I just wanted to explain the basics of where we're coming from, right, with SDX. So SDX is a solution and business network solution aimed to allow customers and suppliers, or buyers and suppliers, to communicate sustainability data with each other. So the first use case we did that with was the product carbon footprint use case. And as we're now exploring, right, the additional use case that we're going to add is the PPWR specific use case integrated with RDP in that regard. So the PCF use case, we already have an integration scenario as well with our sustainability footprint management solution, and we feed supplier data in there to improve calculations. And we aim to exactly do the same thing for the PPWR use case with RDP by infusing supplier maintained data that you can then collect through the business network and infuse that into the RDP systems of our customers in the end. We try to do that in a harmonized, standardized way. So we try to make sure that we use a harmonized data model that is used by everyone. And the reason why we're doing that is to make life of suppliers easier. We don't want them to have custom data models to fill in for each of the different buyers. Instead, we want to allow them to create their data as master data in SDX, coming from ERP systems or potentially RDP systems if they also use this, right? And then with that, they have the ability to feed that information further through the full supply chain. In the end, SDX can be, or Sustainability Data Exchange can be a full multi-tier end-to-end solution where we connect different the tenants of different customers and suppliers together to create an end-to-end supply chain in the end. And that works for PCF already, as we're implementing currently with our OEM colleagues for CleanX, for example, as well, scaling through the supply chain there. We would aim to do exactly the same thing with the PPWR use case as well. Darren, could you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. From an architectural perspective, again, if you were already in the conversation last week or seen the video, the picture here also looks similar as that. And that means that from a sort of rough architecture perspective, what it means is that we connect multiple tenants of Sustainability Data Exchange together through the business network. And what we can actually do is request and respond data. In principle, each member of the network can take the role as the buyer and as the supplier, which means that you as a company can request data for packaging from your packaging producers, for example, ingest that into your RDP solution, create shareable composition data within your ERP, so combine different packaging products together to create packaging compositions as you ship those products out in the end. And your customers that you sell these to, you can actually reshare this data back into the network again and send it to your buyers again, creating a multi-tier end-to-end supply chain. For the perceptive of among us in the call, one thing that you might see additional is that where in the past or presentation from last week, the integration between SFM and SCT or SDX, was based on supplier values being pushed into SFM and own data being pushed out of SFM. That actually for RDP is exactly the same, right? So packaging information from suppliers will flow into RDP, and we'll be able also focus on sharing data out of RDP as well back into the supply chain. So that does not change. But what you see additional is that there is a point one added at the top of the slide now, which actually focuses on request creation. One of the things we also want to achieve, right, especially for buyers is and the packaging engineers that are currently already working in RDP, is to create a unified user experience where we don't switch between applications too much. So what we want to actually do is have the users run the application and be able to request data remotely within RDP, triggering the creation of the requests in SDX. And then when the response flows back from a supplier, the data actually flows into RDP and pushed in there and updates the master data within RDP, so the processes can flow further there as well, trying to limit in the end the switching of content in the end. There are some additional features that we will also allow in SDX, which of course you will always have the option to move to the SDX screens to use that. But in principle, from a perspective of how we start, we will always start from the RDP screens, and data would be visible in RDP when it is returned by the suppliers. That is mostly for customers that use RDP and SDX together. For the suppliers who potentially might not, right, who might just be entering their data so that they can share it into the customer space that they have within the SAP Business Network, they will have a simplified screen in SDX to still be able to maintain their data and these kind of activities, upload it into the system through files or through potential integrations and these kind of things. But that it will be a simplified view so that the suppliers can easily make use of those capabilities and share the data easier. I would add, as I mentioned before as well, suppliers to add data is in principle for free. So they can sign up to SDX for free so that they can expose that data to the buyers. All right, I will take over the sharing now. There are some slides after this slide in the end that highlights a little bit of the changes that we will do in the SDX screens, but I will show you instead in a mock-up screen and click you through the...
Okay, Tim, I'll let you quickly share.
Yeah, thank you very much. So taking over the screen, exactly. So you should now be able to see my screen. You'll see a mock-up screen system where we have, and you can see also here that the flows that we've created are basically focused and divided from customer/buyer flows in the end. So they will be able to request packaging information, they will be able to review packaging information, and they of course have a packaging inventory in the end of data that they've received from their suppliers, and also potentially own data that they have maintained in the system, of course. And then from a supplier perspective, the flows is actually that they typically would respond to requests. So they would basically receive requests and know which data to assign to, and they maintain their own packaging data. And again, this can be also integrated with RDP as well. So clicking through some of the flows in the end, as I mentioned, the integration will be focused on not creating requests within SDX as a buyer. However, we would create requests in the system based on processing them in RDP. And from a basic perspective, master data links will be created as such with your ERP data to ensure that packaging suppliers that you are doing business with are onboarded onto the network. You can then communicate with them and request product-specific information from them in order to make sure that you receive that data back. If I then switch from a supplier perspective, they then receive a request in the end, and they in the end use an exactly the same screen, where in this case it is regarding outbound data, and they receive requests coming in showing that there's a request currently pending for that specific product to provide data to. And from an operation perspective, you can see that you can maintain potentially different kinds of products that you want to link to. So we have an application within SDX that allows you to map between your own product IDs and the supplier product IDs. Maybe in some cases the mapping is incorrect, so you can always change this. Also, if there's no mapping, you can still assign products to the requests as well. They will just come in as being unassigned to a product in the end. What you would then require to do is add response data. And this response data is in the end the data that is packaging data. So from a packaging perspective, you have the ability to add that data and respond back. And as one of the things that you can see compared to the enhancements that you can see compared to the last week's video, is that one thing which is very important is the inclusion of certificates and attachments as proof of the data that is being supplied by the supplier in the end. So we will add, as part of the PPWR enhancements, also the ability to add the data in the end, to make sure that this data is included as well as part of sending it, and they are then received by the buyer in the end. That, in very short perspectives, is the flow of creating a request or having a request on the buyer side and answering a request. But of course, in order to do so, you need to still be able to maintain data. So let's also have a look shortly at a flow of what that would look like, right? So from a landing page perspective, we will go into a flow. You will have an app, which is called, for example, the packaging composition inventory, where you can see inbound data, which is very important to understand. You will never be able to change incoming data from your suppliers. The supplier is the data owner, so they give you data. If you want to change data, you have to re-request that data, and the supplier can maintain it within their own environment and ensure that it is maintained. You can see also review status here, so you do have the ability to have a look at the data and ask for changes if that is required. Maybe there's data missing, maybe you needed to request for additional data, for example. On the outbound side, you do have the ability to maintain data in the end, and that is your own data. So this either then comes from your RDP system, right? If you use your RDP system and you've maintained data, they have set it up and it's replicated so that it can be published in the SDX solution, or you can, in the end, create it, and that is typically for the smaller suppliers that you onboard, which maybe do not have these applications. You have the ability to create for a product, for a data model, a certain data set. Now, what you'll see is a couple of texts that are in the between. We are currently in the design phase, and all the fields need to still be defined a little bit, but from an overall layout, this is what that would look like, right? So you have the ability to main data, you can upload it through Excel uploads, again, integrations, or maintain it directly in the UI for the smaller suppliers to ensure that you can participate. The moment that then a supplier would answer that with data that they've maintained, so again, as master data, they would share similar data to all their buyers within the network. You also have, as a buyer, the ability to review data. So in the end, you will have in the inbound app, so you as a buyer have incoming data, you have the ability to activate the review of certain data sets. And that basically means that you have a response for a request you have previously sent out. You can see the data that is available. You can basically enter that data. You can have a look at the attachment, of course, and basically have a look at what that data would look like. See if that is all the data that you wanted to have. And you have, in the end, the ability to go in and basically have a look at all the data that was there. So you can see which was compliant, which is not compliant, which is the basic data. Again, the attachments are there, and the products that that is assigned to from your ERP system, and also in RDP, of course, which you can then basically accept and decline. In case you decline the acceptance of the data, it basically means that the request opens up on the supplier side again. You have to fulfill a comment, and that comment then describes which data is missing. They have then the chance to adapt their input and send it to you again. If you do, say in this case, I would want to accept that request, what actually then happens is that the data is reviewed. It is considered the correct data in this case, and then from that point onward, it is pushed into the RDP system from there. And you can send it in into the system in the end. Let me just go back to the main screen. Oh, sorry. Now I'm messing up the perspectives. And then in that case, the last point in that is also the able to inventory data overall. So you can have basically a data inventory, in this case for inbound data as well. And you can have a look at the data that is there. Again, exactly the same thing, with just one important perspective. There is no edit capability in that case in this screen. The focus of that is that you can view the data and request and re-request data if there is something wrong with it, or it is out of validity, or these kind of activities, right? Or certificates are now added and these kind of. So just wanted to sort of deep dive a little bit, have a look at what the perspective was. Maybe the last thing I wanted to show. Oh, sorry. Click here. From a landing page perspective, what does that do? So if you are a customer that uses SDX already, some of these tiles that you can see here are already known, right? We have the peer connection app, which shows you the members of the network that you are connected to. You can send invites to connect with them. Your business partners replicated from ERP, and your products, again, also from ERP in the end that you want to communicate about. The main differences, or the main perspective of strategy moving forward, is that we will have an inbound and an outbound app. We have those currently already in the PCF use case as well. They will be combined. So we will have combined inbound and outbound requests for both PCF, RDP, PPWR cases, and also for other use cases that we extend to in the future. So we will always have one common inbox for all incoming and outgoing data. However, what is visible is dependent on the access you have to the system. And this is also where that connects to the inventory screens. We will have separate data inventory screens, and based on role assignment and separation of responsibilities in the end, the packaging engineer will only, for example, be able to see the packaging information, and the sustainability engineer who focuses on the product carbon footprint calculations can only see the product carbon footprint information. If you have both roles, then you can see all tiles, of course. So that is how we sort of within an organization also want to make sure that we use one app for the inflow of data and the outflow of data, but instead still have different departments and user roles in mind to make sure that we split the data into the different departments where it needs to go. That was in principle overall a little bit what I wanted to talk about and show you a little bit of what the system will look like, what we're moving towards now, and how we extend SDX beyond just one use case and structure it in such a way that the common capabilities for requesting data and receiving data are common to all use cases, and where we sort of differentiate on data models and specifics for the different use cases based on data models that are required, mandatory fields, and attachments, for example, that are required in this PPWR case, for example. And in the end, that sort of ends my presentation.
Really good.
Well.
That's really good. So hopefully, you know, all of you out there have heard, you know, here's this new regulation that's coming on packaging called PPWR. It's big, it's complicated, it's got a compelling event in August. One of the problems and challenges that our customers have is getting data into the SAP systems. And lo and behold, here's Tim with a solution to how we can do that. So yeah, we are open for any questions, Larissa, that are out there on the chat. I haven't been able to monitor it myself. So have we got anything coming in?
All right. First of all, thank you, Darren. Thank you, Tim, for this comprehensive talk, for bringing up all these important points. And of course, thanks to Tim sharing how it looks like in the system. And I was also posting the links to whatever was mentioned during the webcast, the link to more information on RDP, for example, or to this RDP webinar that Darren mentioned. So all this information is in the chat, and I currently can't see questions in the chat. I can only ask our audience to leverage this moment now and bring up questions to our experts. And while our audience probably thinking of questions or typing them in the chat, I have a question to Darren. You mentioned this RDP solution and what we currently have. And I was wondering, what are the prerequisites for using it? What kind of, what customers need to have as a minimum requirement to start with the solution?
Okay, that's a very good question. So all sizes of customers can use it. I did, talk a little bit about Nestle, which is obviously a huge customer on one side, but we also have really, really small customers who use responsible design production. So we've got customers that are, just dealing in products in, say, one country. So there aren't any prerequisites because this is essentially cloud software. So if all you have is, you have a third party ERP, even dare I say it, somebody else makes ERP systems other than SAP, but apparently they do. Even if you are running on somebody else's ERP system, you could connect to responsible design and production because it is cloud based. But obviously, if you're running SAP and you're an SAP customer, there are native integrations, so it's a lot easier, it's a lot faster to connect things up. But yes, there's no real prerequisites to have any other products from SAP. It's all in the cloud. We provide everything. Maybe one of the other things to mention, Larissa, is if you do go to the product page. So I just quickly mention the product pages for both. It's really easy to remember our product pages. Our marketing folks have done a very good job here. So it's sap.com/, and then for SDX, Sustainability Data Exchange, SDX, you just type SDX and you get the SDX product page. And for responsible design and production, it's sap.com/RDP for responsible design and production. You can get the product pages. But if you go to those product pages, you can take a tour. You can take a product tour, and you can also request a demo and have a trial of the product. So I would strongly suggest if anybody's interested in having a look at these things, who's like, oh, I'd like to see what this looks like, click on those product pages and go and have a look.
Maybe to add on that one, for the suppliers at least, there's also the ability to sign up to the SDX solution overall. So you can actually sign up and for free, as I mentioned before. You can do this currently already for the PCF use case. And then as soon as we release the PPWR use case, the same thing will apply here, and you will also be able to utilize SDX to provide data to your buyers there as well.
All right, thanks for that. And by the way, these links with RDP /RDP and /SDX, I put them all in the chat. So for those who are in the session now, it's pretty easy just to click these links. And what I really like is this on RDP page, for example, you can request a demo, and I think it's, might give you more confidence before you start using the solution to the full scope. Do we also have a different starting points for the customers? Or I was just thinking, you mentioned customers of various sizes. This is excellent, the solution. But what are the starting points where they can kind of plug into this topic and start?
Sure. I mean, the easiest way to start is often with responsible design production. This is going to appeal to someone who is dealing with all this packaging regulation, right? So the easiest place to start might be, let's say you need to calculate the EPR fees, these extended producer responsibility fees, for, say, one country. So you might test it in one country. Now, customers have different philosophies about this. Sometimes they go, you know what, I can do the easy countries myself, but actually I need a piece of software that can handle the really hard ones. So a lot of our customers use responsible design and production right now for the Spanish plastic tax. That's because it's so complicated. It's really complicated because it's got import and export. You need to be able to net off your imports against your exports. So you really could do with an integration into your core systems where you just have all that data about what products are going where. It's all in your core SAP. So it works really well in that scenario. And also, as I think I mentioned earlier, with the Spanish plastic tax, you have to be able to do a calculation on the fees at the shipment level. So you have to be able to put the fees, the plastic tax fees, onto the invoices that go out the door to your customers. So again, that's a really cool feature that you can do this integration. It uses conditional pricing. If anybody technical is out there, that's how it works. So it uses the conditional pricing records, and then it feeds that into the finance systems, and then that gets printed onto the invoices. So some customers go, let's just start with one country, but let's do a difficult one because then I get very fast ROI. We've got a couple of quotes out there from customers, and you'll find references on the website as well, which talk about customers that have got less than 12 months ROI. So basically, they'll buy this product from us, they'll spend money on obviously implementing it. Implementation options are our local partners. We have some very, very good local partners. So come talk to us about that. We can give you the list. Or SAP Services can also do a very good job of implementing it. Roll it out, try it with one country. The ROI will be less than a year. We've got proof of that. And then once you're happy with it, you've got it working, then you can expand from there. The other thing to mention is with PPWR, if you're just focused on PPWR, we do have a very attractive commercial deal here. My colleague Sarah, if you're listening, you might not be, but if you are listening, she and I have been talking about this for some time. But basically, if you just want a solution that can do the PPWR compliance checks, and as I mentioned, all this functionality is coming in Q1, then all you need to do is buy the minimum number of blocks from SAP. So that's 5 license blocks. And then you can run your PPR across the whole of the EU. So do go and talk to your sales folks about that, or come and talk to us if you need to know a little bit more about that.
All right. Thanks, Darren. I think it's a good moment now to wrap up our session. Again, thank you very much to you, Darren, and team for bringing all these insights. And I think for our audience, and especially for those who will be watching a replay, I think it's a great wrap up to say we have a great solution. It's worth to try it. We also have a good condition with commercial offerings. And for this, of course, feel free to contact our speakers, especially Darren, as he is responsible for this solution. And he and actually anyone from us, myself, Darren, or team will be very much happy to support you on your journey to with a PPRV solution. With this, thank you very much. Thank you, our audience, for being with us, for listening, and hopefully taking some insights out of this session. And we will be, of course, very much happy to know that you share this knowledge within your company, within your organization, and within your communities where this topic is really relevant. With this, thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.